What's good, Raider Nation? Welcome back to Vegas Nation, 1st and 10, your weekly go-to for Raider news, analysis, and commentary. I'm Vinny Bonsignore. I cover the Raiders for the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Vegas Nation, and to my left is my great colleague, Adam Hill. He also covers the Raiders and many other things for the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Vegas Nation. And before we get to all of our thoughts post-off-season program, it's already in the books, culminating with a 3-day minicamp last week for the Raiders. Before we get to all that, I just want to remind everybody that all Vegas Nation podcasts, including 1st and 10, are brought to you by the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Station Casinos, STN Sports, and we really appreciate their support. Adam Hill, the off-season is in the books. Crazily so. We're what, about 6.5, maybe 5.5 weeks away from the start of training camp. Somewhere in July, the Raiders will reconvene and get training camp started over in Henderson. I didn't get your thoughts last week after minicamp. You had to run to an assignment, so we didn't get your thoughts, but your overview on what you saw, not just during minicamp, but also the 10 or the 4 practices that we were able to watch of OTAs.
Yeah, so it's 7 practices total. I think we've been out there for, and got to see things coming together a little bit. I mean, I think we read way too much into it. A lot of times, read way too much into who's playing with who, that sort of thing. I mean, you can kind of see a sense of who's playing where, and depth chart type of things, but not always. I'm reminded. I think I might have told this story in the podcast. I know I told it elsewhere about one of my first years covering camp, and everybody freaked out about an offensive lineman playing like on the first team, and I was like,
wow.
This is nuts. And I was like, oh yeah, the starter went to the bathroom.
Right.
Like that's what happened. And I kind of learned a lesson then of like, oh, okay, this is how this works sometimes. So you can't really read too much into a lot, but I think you see a lot of things developing. I think you see certain players that are developing roles. I think we're going to get into a little bit with Ashton Jeanty. You saw that they worked a lot on throwing him the ball. And I think a lot of that is they want to use in the offense. Another part of it is he just wasn't used that way a lot, so they got to get him up to speed a little bit in order to use him in the passing game more. So that was something you saw. You saw Michael Mayer making some big plays, clearly trying to see what they've got in a tight end who's kind of been a mystery a little bit over the first couple of years. And then you don't see a whole lot of Brock Bowers, right, in making plays and like doing a whole lot. You don't really need to. Like that's not something you necessarily need to work on. Like that's a guy is going to be there and be ready. So I think those are the kind of things that you notice of like, oh, this is what they're trying to work on. They're trying to see what they've got in certain guys, see how they play. And I think one thing that was noteworthy about Pete Carroll, and this is an obvious thing, but sometimes somebody has to say something that's obvious. He's like, oh, that makes sense. Pete Carroll said they wanted to learn how guys learn. Right. So it's, hey, let's see how they handle like coaching, how they respond to this, and then when it's training camp time, we already know these players enough and what they're going to respond to be able to put the things in we need to put in. And I think that's a lot of what you see in minicamp.
Yeah, and that's an important point because I remember Sean McVay when I covered the Rams was notorious for seeking the input from his players, feedback from his players. And one day I asked him like why, and honestly, I remember there was a veteran player. For the Raiders, Andrew Whitworth, actually, and he told me, this is like, and he had come to the Rams from the Cincinnati Bengals, and I was doing a story on that very thing, and he's like, this coaching staff seeks input, seeks feedback. I go, well, isn't that just the way it is everywhere? And he's like patting me on the back going, if you only knew. Like, no, it's not everywhere. One of the things that Sean McVay told me, which is what you're basically referring to, or part of what you're referring to, what Pete Carroll is referring to, is Sean said, look, I don't know what they're learning until I can hear them spit it back to me. And there's times where what they're spitting back to me is basically Chinese. Yeah. And we got to do a better job of teaching that. Or they've got a good command of that. So based on their feedback to the coaching staff has a better idea of what's registering, what's not registering, what they need to slow down on, what they need to reinforce, all those types of things. But I do, piggybacking on what you were saying regarding what you can glean from OTAs and minicamp, I'm with you. The things like who's lining up with who and all that, I think we make too big a deal out of that. But I think you can see things schematically, what they're trying to do. They're literally installing their offense. So some of what you're seeing, I think there's carryover and something to glean from. And I'll say this too. specifically to the Raiders. I think seeing Thayer Munford line up as the first team left guard when Dylan Parham went out, and seeing him at guard, I think there's something there to look into. And I also think, not to make too big of a deal of this, and I'm not even saying that Darren Porter's going to be a starting cornerback, but the fact that he was consistently the starting cornerback leads me to believe that they're trying to at least put him on the fast track to be a starter on this team.
And don't forget, in situations like this, and we'll see it in camp, and it's not always like everybody's going to have their share. Mm-hmm. They want him to win the job. They have a vested interest in him winning the job. Right. They drafted him. Yeah, like that's a guy they brought in. Like, we'll see that. We talk about that with Tyree Wilson, and we're going to get to him a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like, the previous administration really, really wanted him to succeed. They wanted to put him in places to succeed, so that, hey, look, the draft pick was the draft pick, and hey, let's hope he works out. Now, no vested interest. Mm-hmm. They could cut him without. Hey, it's not our pick. We'll move on. But you're right. But what I'm saying is they don't have that. They don't have that tie anymore. So they don't have that same kind of vested interest. So that's the kind of things you see too. And it would make sense that they would want Porter to win that job, and we'll see how he does. A lot of people are raving about how he played. And then the other thing, and I heard a fan say this, a lot of interceptions. There was. Let's just put it out there. Geno Smith threw a lot of interceptions in minicamp and the OTAs. Just happened. And I heard it was a fan that was weighing in on a show that I had listened to, who was like, this is last season all over again. No. This is training camp all over again with the mistakes, and then the mistakes from training camp then carried into the season. And I just think it's different in that, yes, there is that same amount of mistakes, but last year it was no gain, interception. Now it's like big play, interception. Yeah. Like you are mixing those in.
Knocked down at the line of scrimmage too.
Right. Yeah, for sure. But a lot of them were down. Like,
tip balls.
We can't sugarcoat the fact that there was a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
But it's, again, learning a new offense and all those other things in there.
There were also a lot of throws that we just didn't see at all, for sure. Ever. For sure. Really, for the last 2 years, some spectacular throws.
For sure.
Yeah, there were definitely mistakes, which is not unusual.
But I think it's mistakes when you're also – it's back and forth between the offense and the defense. It wasn't the defense dominating every single day like we saw last year. And, again, no hitting yet. So there's still a lot of that to figure out.
Real quick about Thayer, that would be really interesting because when you put him next to Colton Miller, their size. I mean, we're talking about a 6'8" tackle and then a 6'6" Thayer. He's that's. What do you think of that? What do you think of the possibility of that? And I don't think it was just happenstance, and I don't think it was reading nothing into it. In fact, I think that the Raiders would like to see that be a nice little battle in training camp with him and Dylan Parham.
Well, I mean, I think the whole point is they want competition everywhere. Yeah. Every position, every single spot. And if a guy doesn't have competition, they want to find a way to get him competition, either by bringing somebody in or moving positions or something along those lines. So, I mean, I think it would be an interesting move for him. I think it's one that, maybe makes some sense for him, that there's not, if DJ Glaze is indeed the guy, if he is indeed the guy and he's going to be there, then there's not really an opening. There's it's the same in every sport, right? I'm trying to. There's a baseball example recently, and you see it all the time in baseball where like a team has a number one prospect. I think it's maybe the Cardinals. Like has one of the best prospects in baseball that plays shortstop, and like they've got their shortstop of the future that's very young and makes them win, right? So it's like you got to go somewhere else. Got to find somewhere else to go. And
Can you play center field?
If you don't have an opening to go, play that position, then you got to figure out some other spots. And in the baseball case, it's like, hey, can you try center? Can you try second base? Play somewhere else, because even though you are our best prospect, we already got our guy at the starter. So in football, same thing. You've got your right tackle. If you're a right tackle and you want to be a starter, another position might work for you and might make sense for the team to create competition at other places. Yeah,
before we get to, we're gonna hit on Ashton Jeanty and his production. We're gonna hit on Tyree Wilson and Malcolm Koonce. But first, we are gonna start with Ashton. And before we get to that, we got a soundbite from Pete Carroll talking in general about this rookie class. 11 players in this rookie class, and what his thoughts are on what he saw from them during the offseason.
The young guys have done really well. The guys that we chose in the draft have all made a mark at some point and show that they deserve being here. It looks like a really good class all the way through. Both offensive linemen, both defensive linemen, they participated and rolled in with the twos for the most part. Those guys, they held their own. Ashton had an excellent camp, but Dante and Jack They did their stuff. It's a good looking group, and the idea is to force those guys to play early and make them have to play. And to do that well, you have to ask them to do things they're good at. If you just ask them to try to do everything that a veteran knows, they're going to falter and they're not going to be able to show themselves. But if you do it in a progressive manner that gives them a chance to show, then by the time we get to midseason, those guys can be regulars for us. And so this is not a new process. This is the way I've done it with rookies and freshmen and the whole thing for a long time. And it just depends on how well you orchestrate what you ask them to do. And if they can find success, and their confidence builds, and then before you know it, you got a regular. And that just helps our depth and helps us stay competitive.
And that was Pete Carroll at the end of minicamp talking about this rookie class. And over the next week or so, or next couple of podcasts, we're going to do a deep dive into the rookies. But I figured we'd start today when we're talking about the rookies, and why not, with the 6th pick overall in Ashton Jeanty. And, obviously, when you invest that high of a draft pick, especially at that position, I think it's safe to say, it goes without saying, that you need him to produce ASAP. And you probably need him to produce at a pretty big clip. And to your point, them getting him involved in the pass game, as well as obviously what he's going to do in the run game, is indicative of what they want to try to get from Ashton Jeanty this year. And the importance of that, why don't you articulate the importance of that, especially at that position with that pick in the draft, at that high pick in the draft?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to value that we've talked about a lot on the show. I know people don't love this, but this is how teams are built. This is how teams are constructed. Like, you get to a point, one of the reasons that there is the argument out there you don't take a running back this high is not because they're good, because I think everyone would agree Ashton Jeanty is incredible and super talented, unbelievable, is probably going to put up big numbers. The problem you have is because of where he's getting paid, where he's slotted, and this is just reality, if he is really, really good, that's not good enough. Like, it's just not, because of where you drafted him. So if you were to, say, draft a tackle in that spot, he'd be like the 50th or 60th highest paid tackle, maybe even lower than that in the draft. And so you're like, hey, that's barely starter. Like, if you're just an average starter, that's a good pick. But if you're a running back and you're paid in the top 5, because that's where running backs get picked, now if you got like 1,400 yards, not good enough. Not a good enough season to justify that value. That's why the argument is out there. So just so people are understanding what that argument is and why would you not pick a great player in the top 10 if he's a great player? That's what people are talking about.
Going back to when I covered the Rams, they drafted Todd Gurley, I want to say 10th, coming off, by the way, a serious knee injury that delayed his start with the Rams. He ended up getting on the field after the first 4 games. His rookie year, still, went over 1,000. The next year, their first year in Los Angeles, it was terrible because they had no supporting cast. It was a terribly coached team, so that was a wash. People were like, was he a one-hit wonder?
Right.
Well, the next year, you bring in Andrew Whitworth and Sean McVay, blah, blah, blah. He goes on to win, I believe, Offensive Player of the Year award his 3rd year. They go to the playoffs. They win a division title. His 4th year, they go to the Super Bowl his 4th year. He doesn't get – he plays, but he's a shadow of himself because at the very end of that season, with about 3 games left in the season, suffers a knee injury. He was never the same. But those years for Todd Gurley, right there, he was a driving force behind what the Rams offense was with
but Gurley is another great example that people bring up, though, too, because of the other factor you think about with running backs is
he got paid,
injuries.
By the way.
Right, the injuries happen a lot with running backs.
Right.
The more they do other positions, and that's another reason you don't invest that highly in a running back.
He had a devastating knee injury at Georgia.
In college.
Yeah, for Ashton, he's been clean.
Yeah.
But to your point, that could happen.
The workload is a big concern.
The workload is
for sure. And I think, when you look at typically running backs in the NFL that have that kind of workload, then have a fall off the next year. Not always. I mean, you see guys that do overcome that, but typically that's one of the things, and that's another thing that people have talked about with Ashton Jeanty. Again, all this is saying, I don't think anybody on the planet, if you hear people out there, and myself included, I've done it a lot, saying that's not where you pick a running back. It's not because nobody thinks Ashton Jeanty is amazing. The talent is phenomenal. It's just more, how long is he going to be able to play at that level? And the expectations where they are because if you take a running back at that point. Like, even, as I said, a 1,400-yard season, you're like, I don't know.
All right, so we're gonna get into that in terms of what would be a realistic number for him, not just rushing, but because of what we saw in OTAs and minicamp. It's pretty obvious that they're going to get him involved in the pass game, and why wouldn't you? You want to get the ball into his hands because he can make things happen. I went back and looked at Saquon Barkley's rookie year, and Saquon Barkley was drafted 2nd overall. He was
he was top 5.
Top 5 pick. I was actually shocked. I don't remember this necessarily. This was 2018. He went over 2,000 yards in total yards from scrimmage. 1,300 yards was as a runner. He also had 91 catches for 700, close to 700 yards. Might have been 700. But anyway, he had 91 catches, 123 targets, 91 catches for over definitely more than 600 yards.
And for what it's worth, that is the counter argument to the running back value argument. The counter argument is running backs that do catch the ball a lot and put up big numbers in the passing game are above and beyond their value, right? Because now they're a weapon, not just in 1st and 2nd down, not just on 3rd and short, but also in the passing game. Right. And guys like Barkley, McCaffrey, those are guys that are worth that kind of price and that kind of value because of what they bring in the passing game.
So, your prediction, gut feeling on where – here's, I guess, a question for you. Can Ashton Jeanty, can the Raiders justify the pick, the money, all of that in this first year? And is there a number that could justify that?
Well, it's going to have to be over 5 years because that's what you look at.
Okay,
in terms
but
of
just
rookies.
for this year.
But in terms of this year, I think we know the over-under for rushing yards is 1,050.
I think he gets more than that.
But that's very, very much baked into injury, right? So that is hey, if he gets hurt, that's why the betting numbers are where they are. It's not. I think everybody would agree if he plays 17 games, he's going over that number.
That would be a big disappointment if he doesn't.
That'd be a massive disappointment if he doesn't. I think that's where you are. I would think 1,400 rushing is kind of the number that you say that's kind of where he has to be.
Okay. Well, even if you bake into some passing yards.
Yeah, I would guess 4 to 5 passing.
So now we're at.
Now again, here's the thing with Ashton Jeanty: didn't really show receiving ability in college because he wasn't asked to.
And the year before he was. And
the numbers were, but the routes weren't. It was a lot of just toss outs, flip outs. But we're talking about is actually getting in the passing game. Like a Christian McCaffrey is lining up in the slot early in his career. Barkley, I think they did that quite a bit his first year too. Like that's the kind of game-changing kind of receiving numbers. Ashton Jeanty wasn't really asked to do it. He got a lot of receiving numbers his 2 seasons ago at Boise. But again, covering those teams, it was a lot of just like, hey, let's flip it out to you. Let's throw some screens. Let's get you the ball outside.
Which we did see a lot
tackle
of
box.
In OTAs.
Right, but we did see Ashton Jeanty used a lot in the passing game in OTAs as an actual receiver. Like not even necessarily lining up out there, although he did. But I'm talking about in the backfield running actual routes downfield.
Routes.
By the way, showing hands. I mean,
without a doubt.
I thought he showed some impressive hands.
He picked some off the ground.
Yeah.
Might have seen a one-hander. So he shows, at least, just based on what we saw, he shows a propensity.
He has the ability to do it.
Yeah.
For sure. And, will they be able to do that over a full season? Yeah. We did hear Devin White saying in coverage he has not had a catch against Devin White. That's what Devin White claimed.
Okay.
So, maybe there is that challenge. But he said he is doing everything he can to try to shut him down, to show him, like, hey, this is what NFL defenses are like. This is what you're going to have. So that's a challenge you want,
right?
That you want to see happen. I would say, based on, again, covering those Boise State teams, they did not ask him to be a receiver.
Right.
The Raiders are asking him to be a receiver, and so far in drills and OTAs and minicamps, he's lived up to it.
Yeah,
it's been fine. Now we'll see when it's full contact, when it's a real game, when there's schemes, all those sort of things. Maybe it's different, but he can do what they're asking him to do in the passing game.
Yeah.
He's showing that.
I'd have to look back to see where Todd was used at Georgia as a receiver. I don't think it was that much, and I know that under Jeff Fisher, it wasn't used that much. It was that first and second year with Sean McVay that he became a real factor in the passing game. And I'll never forget in training camp, he's over by the jugs machine. And I happened to be walking past, and there's Les Snead, their general manager, watching, and we sat and watched. I mean, if you've ever been by a jugs machine, those things are coming fast. And they could structure it where it's here, wherever. This guy was picking it. And I was like, why has this guy not been used in the past? Well, Sean McVay wised up and got him utilized in the passing game. It'll be interesting to see to the length that, to the extent that they get Ashton involved. But you are basically saying 1,900 yards total yards from scrimmage.
That's where you want. I think that's where you want him.
Is it attainable for him?
Yeah, I mean, because I think they're going to use him a lot. I mean, look, there's other guys in the backfield. I mean, you've got Raheem Mostert, a veteran who's 47 years old.
Oh,
I think he's 33, but he's actually still really good.
Wow.
20-something touchdowns 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Can still play, and I think can play at a high level. I like Raheem Mostert a lot.
Yeah.
And then you've got Sincere McCormick, who I thought actually looked really good throughout the course of OTAs.
Zamir White
being
looked
healthy,
pretty
and
good.
Zamir White looked pretty good again too. So I don't think, as much as they've got those guys and there's talent there, like I don't think there's going to be a lot of competition for carries in this offense as long as Ashton Jeanty's healthy, and
Agreed.
as long as he's pass blocking. Like, that's another question.
Right. Yeah.
What can he do there? Because you can't have him on the field if he's not pass blocking.
Right.
And again, I'm not suggesting there's an issue there. I'm just saying, like, that is a big thing with rookie running backs. When the bullets start flying, if you're not pass protecting, you're not going to be in the game.
And for anyone
Just
who's
how it
worried,
works.
he's only 5'8", go watch Kyron Williams from the Rams, who takes people out.
And that's, by the way, why Kyron Williams plays every snap.
Exactly.
Because he can do that.
Right, and he did it in college, so we didn't. I'd have to look back at the film to watch. Maybe that's a homework assignment for us to go watch Ashton, because they did throw the ball at Boise State as well.
They did, and there was times that they obviously took him out of the game because they didn't want him pass blocking.
Right.
Like, you're like, we don't want you
Adrian
doing that.
Peterson,
but you don't really have that. You don't really have that same ability at this level. Like, you can't just take a guy out
No.
if you're passing and tell the defense that you're passing. So
True.
But yeah, I mean, I think he's capable of doing it. I think he's got the ability to do it if he really wants to, and I think he does want to. So I'm not that concerned about that. But if he is doing that, like, he's going to get a lot of touches, he's going to get a lot of carries as long as he stays healthy. Like, that's where the number should be at.
Man, if he gets 1,900 yards, 18 to 1,900 yards, that'll be the Raiders.
I think that's the standard.
Yeah,
That's where it has to be.
I agree that
Yeah.
it has to be,
Yeah.
but it's him getting there would be just huge.
Yeah.
For the Raiders. But again, that's why you pick somebody with the 6th pick overall. You have to have those expectations, and that needs to be your intent. All right, so we talked about Ashton Jeanty. There's 2 other players that I want to talk about that I think are important for different reasons, kind of the same reason, but for different reasons as well. And that's Tyree Wilson, now going into year 3 with the Raiders, and Malcolm Koonce now going into year five with the Raiders. Kind of he missed all of 1 year, but this is his 5th year in the organization. Obviously, he missed all of last year with the knee injury. Is coming back. Before we do talk about those 2 players, we're going to actually hear from Malcolm Koonce and his thoughts. He wasn't able to get on the field in team activities, but he was ramping himself back. It looks like he's going to be ready to go in training camp. Here's Malcolm Koonce.
It was a process, but I knew I was gonna get healthy eventually. I'm gonna start running. I'm gonna be playing football soon. So it wasn't like I don't know, I was down in the dumps. I knew eventually it was gonna everything's gonna blow over.
All right, that's Malcolm Koonce now in his year. Time flies, doesn't it? Now in year 5 with the Raiders, and I want to narrow in on Malcolm Koonce and Tyree Wilson. I think. Watching Max Crosby again during the times that we got a chance to see him, I think you could, if he stays healthy, you could pretty much ride him in for 15 to 18 sacks, a bunch of quarterback pressure. He was flying around the field. He looks like he's good to go from the ankle injury. So let's go ahead and in pen put him in for 15 to 18 sacks, just being a Max Crosby type season if he stays healthy. Knock on wood for him. That's not still going to get it done. We've covered Raiders teams where Max had great seasons, but it was kind of for naught on a defense that didn't have help alongside him. He needs help, obviously. Good defensive lines. You go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where Raiders general manager John Spytek was before coming to the Raiders. You go to the Philadelphia Eagles. They come at you in waves. It's not just one player. You might have one dominant player, but you have to have production everywhere else. And for the Raiders defense to, I think, be okay, they've got to get pressure on the quarterback consistently. It's going to help their linebackers. It'll help the back end of their defense. So Malcolm Koonce, coming off the injury that he had, What's a realistic, do you believe, number, or a number that, quite frankly, the Raiders have to get from him in terms of those sacks and pressures?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more about pressures. I think it's always more about pressures. Sacks are a little bit of a static number. It's a number of the move. Yeah,
they come in. Yeah,
I think pressures are more important measure of if you're actually getting there. So I think a lot of it depends on, honestly, Christian Wilkins. Like, they do need him to be healthy. They do need him to be back, and I think it's a question right now of just what level he's going to be at. So that is a big – his presence on the inside is going to help everybody get to the quarterback more. So I think that they're going to need his ability to be out there, or, like other guys have to step up on the inside. They loved what Jonah Laulu did last year, and can he take another step forward? But they need that help on the inside to enable
the
guys
JJ
on the outside.
the Tonka Hemingways, Jonah.
They need those guys to step up and be a factor on the inside in order to get the outside. But I think, look, if Malcolm Koonce is out there and he's consistently getting pressure, like, I don't know that he's going to be what he was that second half of 2023 when he was phenomenal those last couple of games. If he can get back to that level, like that's kind of game changing for this defense. I don't think there's any question. But a whole year away, still working his way back in, like, that's a lot to ask of somebody. So if he can slowly get back to that level, I think that would be huge for them.
So what do you?
But I don't know if he will.
If he gets 11 sacks, then if you get 11 sacks, to me, the pressures are there, right?
Yeah.
So the pressures will probably be at the acceptable level or the needed.
Yeah,
level.
I mean, we don't deal too deep into the woods. But I mean, you could have like 4 or 5 that are another guy chases somebody into you, and like you don't even get to the court.
For sure.
That's why sacks to me are like
a
little bit questionable. Yes, I mean, if you're saying like legitimate numbers that he had 11 actual sacks, yeah, I think that would be a massive development for this team.
Okay, Tyree Wilson. He had 5 sacks last year.
I know.
And he had
all at the end of the year.
Right. Yeah, exactly. He had, which I guess is better than
he started
at the beginning of the year.
For the last 5 games, I think he started.
Yeah.
I mean, he talked about it. He said after the bye, he felt different. If you go look at his numbers, his pressure numbers, his sack numbers, his snap numbers,
they were trending up.
Huge after the bye, the last half of last year. And he said that's when he really finally started to feel comfortable. He talked about that development. Like, you're not allowed a development. Go back to Ashton Jeanty. You're not allowed time to develop if you're a top 10 pick.
True.
And he said, hey, it's not unfair.
Yeah.
Like, I got compensated. I got rewarded for that and everything else. But, like, everybody does have their own timeline. His was obviously very different. And he said if you looked at him at the second half of last year, he's a totally different player. And he was starting to make an impact. And if he was a 4th-round pick and you're like, wow, end of your second year, you're making this huge impact, that's great. But if you're a top 10 pick, you don't really have that time to develop like he does. And so I think he's comfortable with where he is. He's happy with where he is. He's excited about going into this season. But again, because, of where the expectations were supposed to be, it's still not enough for a lot of people, for anybody really. When you're looking at it, even for him. So again, he's not tied into the staff anymore. He's not tied into the front office. Like, these are nobody is on the line that's still in the organization for making that pick. So there's nobody that needs to be validated by him doing anything. So we'll see. It's going to be all on his own. But I think if he can, push his way in and force his way into the lineup, I do think he's going to make the team. I've seen speculation he might not make it. I think because of contracts the way they are, like, he probably should be on the team. And I think because of what he did the second half of last year, if he keeps that up, he should be getting some time. And I'm fascinated. If you're
Pete Carroll, you don't care where you come from. No. Obviously, there's organizational pride in your guys that you drafted, developing and producing without question. But Pete also wants to win, and I don't think he cares necessarily who's contributing to that. If you it's the old adage, players make the decisions. If he's playing his way into opportunities, Pete's not going to hold him back for any political or whatever personal reason. He doesn't have time.
Well, I think it's more if it's a tie.
Right.
If it's like tie goes to a runner in baseball, in this case, tie goes to our guy.
But do you feel like he's going to push his way into the equation because he had 550 snaps last year on defense, but that was without Malcolm Koonce there.
Yeah.
All right. So
a lot was on the inside on passing down.
Some of it was on the inside, right? Some of it was on, and I saw him a little bit on the inside during OTAs. A lot of it was out on the edge. I think that's going to change.
Yeah.
But what do you like? Where is his snap? Where are?
Well, I think it's largely dependent on where Malcolm Koonce is, right? I mean, these conversations are related. If Malcolm Koonce is, again, we talk about second half of each of the last 2 years. If Malcolm Koonce is second half of 2023, I don't know that there's that much opportunity for Tyree Wilson. I mean, he's going to play, obviously, but
to kick him inside.
That's going to be tough. If Malcolm Koonce is slow to get back and Tyree Wilson is second half of 2024 Tyree Wilson, I think there's a lot more opportunity, and you're going to see a lot more of them.
Yeah. Last question that I'm going to ask, because I was, when you looked at the way the defense was structured during OTAs, you saw a lot of Charles Snowden was actually running in the ones, and he was upright a lot.
Yeah.
Either dropping back in coverage or rushing the passer. Theory. Pete Carroll talked about Jermaine Pratt, Devin White, and Landon Roberts playing on the field together. So does Devin White now move into what Charles Snowden was doing? I know some of that was because of Malcolm not being there, but there were 4 down linemen, and Snowden was a 5th guy, right? Along the line of scrimmage as a pass rusher or a guy that would drop back in coverage.
I think it's possible. I mean, I think it's very tough to say exactly what this defense is going to look like, because it's a Pete Carroll defense, there's no question, and Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator, has some of his principles that he's incorporating, but it's a Pete Carroll defense. And then there's also a guy like Joe Woods, who's been a coordinator the last 5 years, who also has a lot of his concepts too, passing game coordinator and defensive backs coach. So there's a lot of hybrid different systems coming together. So it's tough to say exactly where they're going to do it. Playing 3 linebackers on the field is a wild concept. It's like 1984 all over again.
Unless that guy is
right.
dedicated
If he's more of a hybrid type of
yeah.
player, you would call it like a star position, something like that. And I think if he's at his best, it could work.
Right.
I'm interested to see how this defense looks with a lot of the different pieces that they're trying to put together when they're actually on the field, and exactly how much of Patrick Graham's defense is incorporated, how much of a little bit of Joe Woods concepts, and certainly mostly Pete Carroll concepts.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a meeting of the minds, and maybe to the not only are the Raiders guessing right now, maybe it'll force the other team to guess a lot as well. It'll be really interesting to see how that all gets melded together. All right, before we get out of here, we're going to we're going to go to Chuck Esposito. He is the race and sportsbook director over at Station Casinos STN Sports, and guess what? He's got a betting line, I think. Right? I think he's going to get to this, but it's the Hall of Fame game.
Wow.
He's going to be talking about the Hall of Fame game. Who's playing in the Hall of Fame game?
I have no idea.
I don't even remember. We'll hear what Chuck has to say. I think it was the Chargers. Maybe, who knows? Somebody's playing in that Hall of Fame game in Canton, Ohio, and we're going to hear from Chuck Esposito, and he's going to talk about it right now.
It's fun to start talking about football, and the Hall of Fame game is the first game that's going to kick it off. It's the Chargers-Lions, 2 teams with a lot of optimism heading into the season. We know how good the Lions are. I think the Chargers are greatly improved. I think the AFC West, especially Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, are really good right now. The numbers pick, but I think the big thing is the total, 32.5. Really low total, but we've seen over the last few years that there's just not a lot of scoring in the Hall of Fame game. There's a couple of really good, I think, week 1 games that jump off the page to me. One, Steelers-Jets. I mean, you talk about 2 teams that kind of flipped quarterbacks. They didn't really trade quarterbacks, but somehow it worked out where Justin Fields is now the Jets quarterback and Aaron Rodgers the Steelers quarterback. Steelers are a 3-point favorite on the road. Both teams have something to prove. I think that's a little bit intriguing as well. There's a few other games that are really interesting to me. What a way to start the season if you're in the NFC North. Lions at the Packers. Lions are actually a small underdog right now against the Packers. Another one that's interesting to me is Ravens-Bills on Sunday Night Football. Ravens beat the Bills on prime time last year. The Bills are at home. They're a small favorite as well. 1.5. And then another NFC North matchup. We know the Bears have a new coach in Ben Johnson. The Vikings will have J.J. McCarthy at quarterback. And they play on Monday Night Football, week 1, where the Bears are a very small 1-point favorite right now. So there's a lot of big games on the board. Those are the ones that really kind of jump off the page to me for opening week of the NFL.
Our thanks to Chuck Esposito from Station Casinos STN Sports. He's the race and sportsbook director of Station Casinos. All right, so looking ahead, there's not a lot that's going on right now. I wouldn't expect
the actual downtime of the NFL.
There is actual downtime.
People talk about 365 days a year for the NFL. There actually is like 5 weeks that are off.
By the way, I talked to some people in the NFL. A lot of people are freaking out in Raider Nation. Don't Jack Bash hasn't signed yet, the second round pick. Why does he not want to be here? Blah, blah, blah. Only two second round picks have signed. It's the first and second pick of the second round. And what's the holdup? Well, those two players, Carson Schlesinger from the Cleveland Browns and Higgins, right, the wide receiver from Iowa State with the Houston Texans, signed fully guaranteed contracts. First time ever that's happened. So that's,
every other second rounder wants that, and every team is saying that's not a precedent. That's a fluke. And so those are the conversations going on now. So you'll see once one of them starts to fall, especially if there's a non-guaranteed one that falls, then we're going to see them all.
And Jack was drafted. Remember, the Raiders kept trading back in the second round. So he was a little bit further down. There's a long line. There's a long list of players that are probably going to have to get signed before Jack signed. Don't worry, it's going to all work out. Yeah. Wouldn't be shocked about that. But anything else that you're focused on before we reconvene next week?
No, it's real downtime now.
It is.
So I mean, there could be some signings, things like that, but even the GMs, agents, they're all on vacation too. So,
absolutely.
They're going to be enjoying themselves, and we'll still have football to talk about here, but a lot of downtime right now. So enjoy it. I guess if you're a football fan, this is your actual time to relax a little bit.
Absolutely. I want to say thanks to the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Station Casinos SCN Sports. I really appreciate the support. I want to say thanks to you, our listeners, our readers, however you absorb what we do at Vegas Nation and the Las Vegas Review-Journal, whether it's digitally, getting the paper, whether you're clicking onto our stories or our videos or our podcasts, our great photo essays, the great work that Adam Hill does, the great work that Ed Graney does. Thank you so much for that, and spread the word around. If you have Raider fans in your family or amongst friends, hey, tell them about Vegas Nation. Tell them to subscribe. We cover the Raiders 24/7. That's no lie. We're cranking out stories and content.
I just said it's downtime, and we just had a story meeting today about stuff coming up the next 2 weeks.
Exactly. And there's, so we've got you covered. We're the best that there is in terms of that, the most consistent when it comes to that. So like I said, tell your friends, tell your Raider friends that we're the place to go for Raider news and analysis. Until next week, enjoy your weekend. Hope you're staying cool wherever you are. It's getting hot here in Las Vegas. Enjoy the weekend. We will talk to you guys next week. Thanks.